Welcome to the Pretty Powerful Podcast, where powerful women are interviewed every week to share real inspiring stories and incredible insight to help women or anyone break the barriers, be a part of innovation, shatter the glass ceiling, and dominate to the top of their sport, industry, or life's mission. Join us as we celebrate exceptional women and step into our power. And now, here's your host, Angela Gennari.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Pretty Powerful Podcast. My name is Angela Gennari, and today I'm here with Diane Helbig. Hi, Diane.
Hi, Angela. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you. So, Diane Helbig is a business and leadership advisor and trainer. She's an award-winning author and speaker and Accelerate Your Business Growth podcast host. She is the author of Succeed Without Selling, Lemonade Stand Selling, and Expert Insights. This is going to be a great conversation. I'm excited to talk to you.
Me too.
So what made you want to get into consulting first? And did the consulting come before the speaker and the author, or how did that all happen?
So life-changing moment, wanted to do something that had more of an impact in the world, just I'll call it a midlife crisis, I guess.
Yeah.
And I decided that I wanted to take all of my experience in business leadership and sales and help other people, right? And so be able to help small business owners, because I was watching them do things that I would just think to myself, stop, like, this is nuts. Just don't do that, right?
Yes.
But then, okay, well, I'll go out there and I'll do it. And the consulting did come before I started the business, and part of it was writing a lot. So I wrote a lot of articles that then turned into a book that then went to speaking, and it all just sort of flowed.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, I'm always curious about that, because sometimes you have someone who comes up with this great book idea, they put the book out, and then the book leads to speaking engagements, and then that leads to consulting. Others will start with consulting and then take all the knowledge that they've gained and all the experiences, and they throw them into a book, and then they talk about the book. So it's just curious, because I do a little bit of speaking myself, but I'm not an author. But mostly it's based on the podcast. So I'm always curious about how, everybody's journey is slightly different.
Slightly different. Yes. But I'm the second person you mentioned.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. And your niche sounds like it's selling.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So talk to me about what makes a great salesperson. What makes someone a great salesperson?
Someone who doesn't sell.
Oh, interesting. I love it. Okay. Now you've got my attention.
Right? I know.
You
weren't expecting that. No.
Yeah. Okay. So talk to me about that, because honestly, like, I hate to be sold to. If somebody calls me and it sounds like a salesperson, I immediately I tune out. And so I love that you say somebody who doesn't sell, because I think that that's very true. So
right.
Tell me what that means.
So for me, what it means is not doing that thing that for some reason we were trained to do back in the 80s.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. All the sales training in the 80s told us the exact same thing.
Yeah. So it might have worked back then. I'm not convinced that it did. But when the internet started being a thing, consumers didn't need the salesperson as much. Back then, the salesperson was the expert. You needed them to explain their product or service to you. We don't need that anymore. And no one likes being sold to.
Right.
So my thing is, don't tell and sell, listen and learn.
Okay. I like that.
Yep. So no selling, asking, listening, really listening, learning, and then, if it makes sense, connecting.
Yeah. I like that too, because I don't see myself as a salesperson, but I tend to be one of the strongest salespeople in my company. And I have multiple salespeople, so I shouldn't be. But the reason is because I don't care to sell to anyone. right? And I think that's
Yes.
actually what helps me, because they know if I'm calling them, it's generally not to sell them anything, because I don't want to
Right.
be a salesperson, and I don't like the sales process. I don't like to be sold to, so I don't want to do that to anyone else. More than anything, I'm just trying to help them solve a problem. And so that is why it connects. I'm just calling them to say, okay, tell me what the issue is, and let's get to the solution. And they trust me, because I'm
Right.
not selling them anything.
Right.
Mm.
Because what they know is it's about them,
Yes.
not you, not your quota, not your mortgage, not your employee, paying your employees. When salespeople have that, I have to hit quota, I have to sell, I have to, everyone sees that and feels
Mhm.
it, right? And their focus is so on themselves, they're not listening, they're usually doing way too much talking,
Yes.
and they're not walking away from the people they should walk away from.
Yes.
And that's where bad clients come from.
Yep.
And then we
Yep.
have a whole profit problem, right? So it's just bad on every single level.
Yeah. And you don't want to force a client, because what I have noticed is if I try to force someone in and say, I really want this client, I really want them, and they're
Yeah.
beating me over the head about price, and they're beating me over the head about different things, they're going to continue to do that, because they're not the right client for us. And
Right.
I should just let it go. I don't, we got to get out of the ego of sales. And there's
Yeah.
ego involved.
Well, and if I said to you, every single one of those clients is costing you money,
Mm-hmm.
where's your ego fit in that?
Exactly.
Right? Because you're not doing anybody any favors. They're not going to refer you. They're never going to be happy. They're going to drain your energy. They're going to drain your people. You're going to lose money. And it's preventing you from going out and getting those really good clients, the ones who do trust you, who want to do business with you and engage with you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yes, I agree. So social media has become a big thing, right? So I think one of the reasons, when you were saying we don't need salespeople to be the expert, we have the internet. It's so true. We can look up anything we want on the internet. Everybody has a website. I can go to somebody's website and learn all I need to know about them, and I can go to social media. So how important is social media when it comes to sales?
You know, my viewpoint is that social media is marketing. It's not selling. We're not supposed to sell on social media, but it's great for relationship building. It's great for research. And it's great for gaining exposure and credibility.
Yeah.
So, right. So if we look at it that way, then we're going to use it as the marketing vehicle that it is.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that, we're not going to be everywhere. You have to be where your prospective audience is. You have to be talking about something that they care about, something that matters to them. Those people who are selling on social are ruining their reputations,
Yes.
and they're never going to get that back.
Yeah. Well, and it feels so contrived. It feels so forced, and I see all the people who are like, get my 3 tips for blah, blah, blah. You just have to download my ebook, and you have to do this, and you have to do this, and you have to do this, and then you have to listen to my 20-minute sales pitch. And it's like, you just ruined it for me. Just give me the information. And if I feel like what you're saying is helpful, I will reach out to you, but don't force feed it to me.
Yes, that's what I always say. So I say, you can't sell anything to anybody.
Yes.
So let it go, right? People will buy from you when they have a need and when they trust you.
Mm-hmm.
The only way they're going to trust you is when they firmly believe that you care more about them than you do about making a sale.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? So don't be messaging this over here when you should be over here.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree with you. So how do you show a client that they mean more to you than you mean to you? How do you do that? Well, what is your strategy?
Okay. So the first thing you do is you have a ton of questions that you ask that have to do with more than whatever the thing is that you solve.
Okay.
So those questions have to do with, what is their timeline? sense of urgency? How do they decision make? Have they ever worked with a company like yours before? What was their experience? Like, you're just trying to learn as much as you can. And there are certain things we have to know in order to know whether they're a good prospect, that we should be quoting them. Money's one of them.
Yeah.
Right? And no one likes to ask budget questions, and people will ask them, but then when the prospect doesn't answer it, they move on. You can't move on. You have to know the answer. So for me, it's being genuinely interested first in everything that they tell you, listening to learn instead of listening to respond, and making sure that if they're not giving you the answers that you need, you're probing that.
Yeah.
That you're saying, I'm noticing hesitation here. Would you mind sharing with me what that's about? Because that's an element of whether I can help you or not. So somehow we're going to have to get to some understanding of where you're at with this, what your ceiling is, whatever that is. So would you mind sharing that with me? So salespeople have to talk less, listen more, but they also have to be able to go there, ask those questions. And you know what? If you don't get the answers that you need, you have to be able to say, yeah, I'm not the right resource for you. And I can't give you a proposal because I don't know all of the information to be able to accurately do that. And you are perfectly within your right to not share whatever you don't want to share with me. And I know that runs the risk of us spending time unnecessarily down the road, right?
Yeah.
And you just be honest. You know your business. You know what you need to know. People respect that. And if they're not going to give you the information, they don't want to work with you.
Yes, absolutely.
So move on.
So how important is relationship building? Because like you're talking about having these conversations, but do you do that? Is it the same as it always was, where sales is a numbers game? They used to say all these things. Sales is a numbers game, and you just gotta make so many cold calls every day, and you've got to do this and you've got to do that. Does that still work or no?
Well, no. It is a numbers game. I will say that you have to be doing consistent
Right.
prospecting and outreach, right? Relationship building is really what it's all about. So what I say is there's activity and there's productivity. Activity is making 40 calls a day.
Right.
Productivity is knowing who's in your target, researching them as much as you can, which these days is almost endless, learning as much as you can about them, drilling that list down to, getting rid of the ones where it's just, they don't fit your ideal client paradigm. And then reaching out to the ones that might be, but reaching out to them for a meeting, for a conversation, not for a sale, right? And then taking it from there.
Yeah, I am much more standoffish when somebody says, hey, can I just get 15 minutes of your time? Because to me, I know I have to now listen to a sales pitch for 15 minutes. That doesn't sound like fun to me. That doesn't sound like something I want to do and add into my day. So my general knee-jerk reaction is, no, I can't give you 15 minutes of my day. But if they were to say, hey, curious how this goes, I'd love to if I could just get a few minutes, I want to be able to offer a solution that's tailored to what you actually need. I would be all in, because I don't have to listen. I can speak and I can tell them what I need versus them just getting whatever off the shelf version of they think I need.
And you know what? I mean, it's such a great point. And what I always say is the more you're as a salesperson, the more you're talking, the less people are listening. Because they don't care, right? It doesn't mean anything to them. You want to tell them every little thing you do, they don't care. You got to get to what matters to them and then talk about that thing. So yeah, it's so ridiculous. This is why I say people, they just have to stop doing these things. They don't work. And then there's all these small business owners and salespeople blaming the prospect.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's oh my gosh. I hear that all the time. Salespeople were like, well, they're just not motivated, or they're not this. Like, everybody has their, you can convince anyone to do things. You just have to get to what is it that they actually need, and stop trying to solve problems for them that they don't have.
Right.
So
Exactly. And
yeah.
that's for the relationship building afterward, right? So when you get them as a client, you have to continue to nurture that relationship, because they're going to have other needs, or and they may be needs you have that you don't solve. But when you can connect them to someone who does, you're even more valuable to them, right?
Yep.
And so when that time comes that they do have something else that you can do for them, you're aware of it. You can tell them then what that thing is and how you can help them. And they're, you can get more business out of a client.
Absolutely. So you say something in your bio that I love, and it's the 30-second sales pitch doesn't work. Please tell me more about that.
Okay.
Everybody tells you to practice the elevator pitch.
This drives me out of my mind. I mean, there's a lot, obviously, you can tell that drives me out of my mind, because none of this stuff works, and yet we do it. So that all came up back in the 80s when some brilliant person probably made a ton of money trying to teach people that they had to be able to sell in the time it took to take an elevator trip with someone. So if you just happened to be in the elevator with the CEO of Walmart, right? What would you say that would get them interested in an elevator ride? It's ridiculous. It's not a pitch. It's not a commercial. You aren't going to sell anything to anybody in that 30 seconds, and you don't want to. It should be an introduction. It should be telling someone the result that you bring and who you bring it to, or what you're most passionate about in your business. You're trying to start a conversation. You're not trying to sell, because once again, like if we go with my philosophy that you have to build the relationship, you have to get to know the person, you and the company, you need to figure out whether there's a need and whether you even want to do business with them, right? They could be a total jerk. The only way you're going to know is by having conversations. So why would you try and sell them in 30 seconds when you first meet them?
Right.
Right? It's just, it doesn't work. Stop.
So what would work? So say you are in the elevator with the Walmart CEO. What do you say to them?
I would say, so tell me your story. How'd you get here?
Yeah.
Once again, I'm more interested in them than I am in them knowing about me.
Right.
Right. So when I meet someone at a networking event or in an elevator or whatever, I'm saying, so tell me about you. Tell me your story, because they're going to tell you whatever they want to tell you, which is going to give you an awful lot of insight into who they are, what matters to them. And it's going to give you the opportunity to have a conversation with them. And then when they say, well, tell me about you, I would say, you know what? I spend most of my time working with small business owners, helping them change their practices so they get better results.
Yeah.
I don't go into, all the, and I've been doing it for 20 years and, no one cares.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I love that. Okay. So, yeah, I've thought about that a lot, because, you do get into those situations where you're like, hey, this person I've been trying to get in touch with and trying to network with is finally in front of me. How do I rein them in? And, but yeah, sometimes it's as simple as, asking, so what problem are you trying to solve today that I can help you with?
right.
They
Or
might
even,
say, do you know of a good dry cleaner? Like, I can figure that out for you, right?
right,
And so it could be something
right,
as simple as that. And if
right.
you can help them solve one problem, then they're curious about who you are and how you can help them more.
That's exactly right. Right. It's people, right? If you went to a family event where you had not seen your nephew for 5 years and he's in his early 20s and he said, so, catch me up.
Yeah.
Would you go into a whole pitch thing? No, you would, like a human, right? You would say, well, you know what? I started this business and this is what I'm doing and whatever. You would just be more natural, more regular English. So,
Mhm.
because it's more relational, right? That,
Absolutely.
that's what I want people to do. And I agree with you. If you say, so, what are you working on today? What's going on with you? I don't even know that I would necessarily say that I can help you with, because I'm setting up no alarms that I want to sell them anything. I've even said to people, I'm not going to try and sell you anything. I just want to have a conversation. If I can help you, I'll tell you. If I can't, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Now I mean it, and they can tell that I mean it. So
And I
I
think
can
that's
usually get the
powerful.
meeting.
There's power in the you're not tied to the result, right? And
Right.
so in everything that I've ever read about negotiation, and this is why I think we can be great negotiators as women, is you can't be tied emotionally to the result of the negotiation. And everybody says I have a lack of empathy in business, and it's not that I have a lack of empathy. You can't run a business on emotion. And
Right.
so by being able to step away and say, this is not personal, this is a business decision, and this is what we need to do for the betterment of the business, you start making rational decisions, right? You take that
Right.
stoic approach to business, and I think that actually is very valuable. But it's the same thing in sales. If you can remove yourself from the result, you'll be a lot more successful.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. It is so in both ways. I love it. It is so true. You have to detach from the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
That way you get the right outcome. And it
Yep.
may be that you pass on that piece of business because it's not
Mhm.
right now, right? It's not right for the time, whatever it is. But yeah,
Mhm.
totally.
So when you came into consulting and being an author and a speaker with 20 years of managing small businesses, so what were some of the challenges that you faced managing small businesses?
Oh my gosh. That's such an interesting question. I think I probably the biggest was not how do I want to say this? Staying focused and
Mm.
making sure everyone stayed focused.
Mhm.
So it's one thing to manage a small business um, when it isn't yours. You run into, small business owners have this bright, shiny object
Yeah.
illness that they want to do everything. And so then they
Uh-huh.
throw it all in constantly, and it's too disruptive
Yeah.
to everyone else, right? So I love strategy and systems, and you get them set and everything's starting to flow. And then this torpedo comes in with a whole other idea. That's, I would say, probably like the biggest. It wasn't the people who were doing the work. I found that, if it turned out that this was the wrong place for them, that was a relatively easy conversation to have. It was, and getting them to buy into the whole culture and concept, that was easy.
Mhm.
It really ended up being on the other end of the,
Yeah.
of the map, with reining people in and getting them to not overextend everyone so that then nothing worked.
So this is a really interesting answer because I'm in the process right now. I'm almost finished with it, but have you heard of the book called 10X is Easier Than 2X?
Yes.
Okay, so I love that because it goes directly to what you just said. It talks about in order to get to 2X, you just have to work longer and harder. But to get to 10X, you don't add anything, you take it away. So
Yes.
you have to become hyper focused, which is really small, is really difficult as a small business because
Yes.
as a small business, you look at every opportunity as like, oh, that, oh, and that, and that, and that, and we can do this and this and
Yeah.
this. And you
Yeah.
already wear too many hats. You're already not focused. You're already working too many hours.
Yeah.
And the whole team is exhausted because, of your ADD management style.
Right.
And I can say this as a small business owner. So I really have to try. I have to be intentional about it. because naturally I want to chase every opportunity,
Sure.
but logically, I know that's not possible.
Right.
And
Right.
this 10X book is really teaching me that by chasing every opportunity, I'm 2Xing my business, but I'm not 10Xing my business.
Right.
So it's all about stripping it down to what is it that you are really truly gifted at, and how
Yeah.
can you use that gift in the most productive way possible, and take away all the other bright shiny objects. You got to get narrowly focused.
You really do. I tell my clients, you can do anything you want to do. You just can't do it all at the same time.
That's right.
So let's figure out what we need to do right now. And
Mhm.
everything else is going over here on a shelf.
Yes.
Later, we'll review it, right? Because
Yep.
later you may decide no, but
Yes.
then we can start doing this, but you're never going to get there if you're
Mhm.
trying to do all of these things. It's not possible.
Absolutely. So true. So tell me a little bit more about, you wrote your book. You wrote 3 books, right?
Yes.
You wrote
Yes.
3 books. So how long does it take you to write a book? What motivated you, and how did you come up with the premise of the book?
Oh my gosh. Okay. My first book took about a year.
Okay.
So when I started my consulting practice, one of the things that I learned is there are different ways of marketing, and that writing articles was one of them online. And I had a lot to say. So I wrote a lot of
That's
articles.
good.
And I would put them out on these directories. And through that, I met a gentleman who had started right then, he had started this Top Sales World organization where he gathered all these sales gurus, and he asked me to join that. So I did. And I kept writing and hanging out with these people. And then I had like all of this content, and I thought,
Yeah.
you know what? I should put this into a book, right? So I did, but you can't, what I was told was you can't just take your articles and plop them into a book. You have to write the book. So I did. That was Lemonade Stand Selling.
Okay.
So I did that. Then I felt like a couple years later, oh, I got to have another book, but I didn't really have anything in my head. And a friend of mine said, take the 10 most listened to episodes of your podcast and put them into a book.
Ooh, that's a good
I
idea.
know. See, I know you could do that. So I did. I got someone to download and transcribe, and then I got an editor to fix up the chapters, got them to sign off, the guests to sign off that whatever. And that was Expert Insights. So it was relatively easy on my part. I didn't have that much to do. Then with Succeed Without Selling, that was my passion project. And that took about a year and a half because I really wanted to get out of me everything that I was saying and teaching about selling to every selling audience, direct sellers, sales managers, you name it. If they had, and with forms and the whole, listen, use this, do this, networking, all the different aspects. And because I was just still seeing people doing things that I thought were wrong. And so I was just driven to get something out there.
Yeah.
And so that one took longer, but, and then it published in December of 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. So,
well, was that maybe a good thing? People are at home reading, or no? Because
it didn't end up being a bad thing. The bad part was that my publisher couldn't get it in bookstores because there were no bookstores.
Yes.
So, yeah, but I had a marketing firm that did a great job of marketing and getting it out there and whatnot. So, it was fun.
Good. Very cool. Yeah. And then the books, I assume, led to more speaking engagements.
They do. Yeah. And I had started speaking really pretty much the same time I was writing, because that was the other thing I learned, that if people can hear me and see me, then they'll know that I know what I'm talking about, or they'll decide I'm not their cup of tea, whatever it is. Right.
Yeah.
And so, but the books give you that weird credibility thing that, organizations and associations want. And so it does, it elevates you a bit. And so it's been a lot easier to get different speaking engagements.
Very interesting. I love it. So when you decided to come into consulting, what were some of the obstacles that you had to overcome?
So I had to overcome, I had to learn to be patient
Yeah.
because I knew what I was talking about, but I had to learn that other people didn't know that I knew what I was talking about. And so I had to give them time, people time to, I was fortunate that I had a really good network. And so it made sense to my network.
Right.
But then there were strangers who had no idea who I was. Right. So that was like a big thing for me. The other thing was, I did bright shiny object, and which is a big problem. And I entered into a partnership with a friend of mine, and the partnership part was great. But when we launched it, then one of the companies we reached out to wanted to meet with us, but for a totally different reason. And we went there instead of saying, whoa, no, this is why we're here. This is what we want to talk about. So we went down this whole rabbit hole with these folks for a couple years, and it just wasn't what we should have been doing. So, it was really learning not to partner. I mean, she was fine. Then I partnered with this other guy. It was a disaster. To really patience, and I mean, now that I'm saying it out loud, it really was just being patient with the process and putting the wheels in motion and letting them happen and not getting sidetracked with something that looked like it would be a great opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Oh my gosh. There's so much advice I would give to my
Where to
self.
begin?
I would say, it's so interesting because I never listened to the people who said no, that I couldn't do things. I think I would tell my 18-year-old self to be more patient with other people and to respect that they have a different view of the world. I would tell my 18-year-old self to learn to speak more effectively and not so emotionally.
Yeah.
And to always try. I mean, I always tried anyway, but there were probably things that I didn't pursue that I could have, things that I probably felt like I wanted to do, but didn't think I could or had the knowledge, ability, courage, whatever it is. So
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree with that. I think there were probably a lot of times in my life where, even though I know I work really hard and I give 100%, I probably didn't do things because I just didn't feel like I was qualified. I didn't feel like I could, I felt like an imposter. And then, come to find out much later in life, everybody's an imposter.
yeah.
Y'all are, every single one of us. Like there's
So
nobody who's already got it all figured out. None of us.
Right.
So
Right. I
there's
know.
no harm in trying.
There's
Yeah.
no harm in trying. Yeah, I think that's huge. I felt the same way. And you know what? I still do sometimes. There's things that, like speaking opportunities, I'll go, oh, they're not going to want me. It's not, they're going to want someone who's like that,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and
First couple times I got asked to do speaking opportunities, I'm like, oh, is this a mistake? Like, are you just trying to fill time? Like I don't possibly have anything to say, but yeah, so interesting. That's fascinating.
Right.
Very cool. So I always ask on this podcast, tell me about a time that you gave your power away, and then another time that you stepped into your power. Because as women, I think we just do that by nature a lot.
Sure.
And,
Sure.
we actively have to overcome. So can you tell me about a time that you gave your power away?
Yeah. So when I'll give you a prime example. I had this whole idea of a program, a nonprofit program for high school kids to get them off the street and into learning how to do something that was of value. And I had the whole thing mapped out, like, you know, and I thought it was a great idea. And I was sitting talking to someone who I had just met, and we were talking about ideas, and I light up when I talk about this thing because it's just means so much to me. And he jumped, he was just like, yeah, that sounds great. We should work on that, whatever. So we met, we had coffee, whatever. Next thing you know, we've partnered on a space where we're going to have an entrepreneur center, and we're going to offer coaching, and like, I'm going to advise people and he's going to help them find funding. And all of a sudden we're doing this whole thing. And I never once said, wait a minute, this is not at all what I'm talking about over here, right? I just sort of let it go. And then as it evolved, it was a horrible relationship. I was never doing the thing that I was supposed to be doing there. And I just kept rolling with it. And then I got to a point finally where I said to my husband, I think I need to get out of this. Like, this is, you know, and he said, okay, go ahead. And it was destroying my regular business. I mean, it was terrible. And so I finally did. I finally just said, you know, this isn't working. Here's how I suggest we part ways, whatever it is. And we did end up, thank God, you know, doing that. So I learned a really big lesson with that whole thing. And you know what? I stepped into my power when I started my business. I had been working as a salesperson, and they kept changing things and setting up, you know, commission structures that just weren't great. And my father passed away. And then, so on November 1st. So I went all of November dealing with that. It was right after a hurricane too. Anyway, so all that. Then December was visiting my top clients. So I didn't prospect for 2 months, and they had just changed what it was I was selling. So I had I had to refer whatever I got to someone else in the company. Then they said they were going to dock our pay if we didn't hit this ridiculous point system.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went to my boss, who was the owner, and I said, can I have 3 months to ramp up? Because I don't think this number's possible anyway, but I'm willing to give it a shot, right? But I've been, you know, when you stop prospecting, you stop. And he said, no.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, time for a change. And I had been having this conversation, you know, with my family. So I wrote up a whole proposal for becoming an independent contractor. So I'd still get my commission because it was residual revenue. So I could do that while but I wouldn't be an employee anymore. And I just held I said I was channeling my father. So I just said, you know, when he said no again, I said, then I'm going to have to give you my 2-week notice. And he said, okay, hang on, wait a minute. And I only wanted 20 of my clients, not even the 20 best, the 20 I liked the most.
Yeah.
And he wasn't paying attention, and I got all of them.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Because I was just, you know, zen.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you had detached yourself from the result.
I did. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It
That's
gives
right.
you leverage. When you could detach from the result, it gives you leverage because you're like, I'm going to be fine. You already had the talk with your husband. You already knew you were going to be fine no matter what. And you were able to make the best decision because your ego wasn't tied into the result of it.
Right.
That's amazing. I love it.
Thanks.
Very cool. So give me your top 3 tips for a salesperson.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Ready?
I know you probably have like 100.
I have, yeah.
Just give me
I'll
your
pick the
top 3.
three.
How can somebody be a successful salesperson?
Okay. So the first one is, when you go networking, don't sell. Okay. Be quiet and listen. Build relationships. That's, you know, build a toolbox around you. The second one is, when you're prospecting, seek the meeting, not the sale.
Ooh, that's a good one.
And the third one is, when you are in that sales appointment, do not speak other than asking questions. Like, what I usually say is shut up. Right? I mean, please shut your mouth. They
Yeah.
don't care about
Yeah.
what you have to say. So, but you need to ask all your questions. And then when you're detached from the outcome, you'll have an opportunity to take it wherever it's supposed to go.
Mm-hmm. So how do you then suggest people do presentations? And so I ask this with a specific purpose. So, sometimes you will have already, somebody has already said, hey, we want you to come in and present about your company. You already have seen the RFP, right?
Yeah.
So now is your opportunity to come in and tell them about you, because they're specifically asking you to tell them about you. You've already submitted a proposal. You've already seen what their RFP is. You know what their needs are. How do you suggest going in there and nailing a great presentation?
Yeah, boy, that's a great question. So the first thing, so I think it has sections. The first one is a summary of what you learned about them,
Mm-hmm.
what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, that's really good.
Right? Yeah. And so, because then part of what you're doing is you're confirming that you were listening, you're
Yes.
confirming that you actually heard and read, what it is. And then from there, at most 3 bullet points, like at most. So I could go on and on about presentations. Please no words, please no words, unless it's like one word. Because they're going to read faster than you can talk, and you're going to lose them, and you need to keep them and their energy. But you connect your solution to their points, those pain points. This is how our solution helps with this. This is what we do. And then you can do this is what a rollout would look like. Like, this is what an implementation schedule would look like. So you're setting the expectation and preparing them so they learn you really know what you're talking about. You have a system in place. You've listened to them. You've created a strategy and a solution for them. This is how we handle, well, actually, I think there should be something in there about communication, about the expected communication chain, because that's something that gets lost a lot of times. But I would say that, and then Q&A.
I love it. Okay. Yeah, because I usually will do very similar. I think, summarizing what is it that you know about that client, and how does what you do specifically address what their problems are, and sometimes if they're just being a little tight-lipped about it, what I'll do is I'll make a general statement that I know applies to them, but I'm not pointing fingers, for example. So like, I know who I own a security company. So sometimes I know who their security company is, and I know what the general impression of this security company is. And so I may bring up something that's not specifically addressing their security company,
right?
But it's addressing what one of the things that I know is a general problem in the industry that I know that this security company deals with. And so I think that it's a good way and then usually you'll see them say,
right?
I know that's
nailed it. Yeah.
So yeah, just try, and sometimes you just, in order to avoid, because I don't like it when somebody comes in and bashes the competition. That's not what I do.
No.
You definitely want to take more of a neutral stance of like, this is what I know to be a general concern, and how to address that. And usually they love that.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say, like, things not to do. Don't put your whole company resume on there, and your company history, the timeline, whatever. That's in the documentation. They can read that, right? We have to think about, what can they read?
Yep.
And what do they want to know? And what they want to know is, do I understand their problem, and do I have a solution for it? The other stuff comes later, and then they'll read it if they really care. They'll have someone do their due diligence, right? So.
Yep. Well, and I always like to start and end with a powerful slide. If I'm doing a slide presentation. So the first powerful slide has nothing to do with our meeting in particular. It's a general, liability slide, like this is what liability means. And this is, like it's a general, like really powerful statement about liability, about a situation. It was the World Trade Center bombing. And then I'll end with a slide that all it does is has all of our client logos on it. And
Oh, sweet.
it just is a powerful place to stop, because they'll kind of stare at it like, like, okay. And I don't say anything about the slide, nothing. I just leave it. And that's when we go to Q&A, is with that one up, so that they can see whatever issue you're going to bring to me, I've already addressed it.
That's powerful. I love that. And you don't need to say anything.
I don't even address it. I don't even mention that it's up. They see it and so that way they can, because one of the questions, it's always, the questions that people have in their mind when they're being sold to is, what is it? Why does this matter to me? That's why I start with liability. And who else have you done business with?
Yeah. Because
they want to know that you're going to bring a problem, that you've already addressed a situation similar to theirs.
Exactly.
Right? And so those are the two most prevalent questions from clients. And if you can answer them without answering them, it's even better.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. Good for you.
Yep. So that's, I always, I go in there with no agenda to sell. All I am here for information, and
exactly,
it doesn't, and that's okay. And I think by removing myself from the result, it's okay. So,
and not only that, but you're calm, you're personable, right? You are your authentic self, which is what they're going to resonate with or not.
Absolutely.
So it's part of the reason not to be in a sales mindset, because then you're acting like someone else.
Yeah.
Just be you, right? It's easier. It's more natural.
A whole lot easier to be me than to try to be somebody else.
Right.
For sure. So absolutely. Well, this has been a really enjoyable conversation. I just have one more question for you. And what is it that you wish more people knew?
Oh my gosh. I wish more people knew that they also had a say in the decision-making process with the prospect. So, we think that we have to, convince or persuade the other person, you know what? We're buying them too. It's like a marriage.
Absolutely.
So, right? So we get to have a vote. And I wish more people realize that. It's okay to walk away.
So true. Because there are definitely some times where we've taken on clients that were not a good fit, and you have to fire your client, and that's okay. And people have fired us because we weren't the right fit for them. They've sold us on a solution. It wasn't the right solution. And so they've said, you know what, this is probably just not a good fit. And that's okay. It's okay to walk away from a relationship that's not working, whether it's a work relationship or a personal, if it's not working, it's not working. Right. And that's okay. Get your ego out of it and make sure that you understand that.
Yeah, exactly. And learn from it.
Absolutely.
Right. There are no failures. Every experience is positive as long as you learn something from it. So
yes, for sure. So Diane Helbig, how can people find you?
I think the best way is for them to go to my website, helbigenterprises.com, because everything is there.
Awesome. And we can also find Diane on prettypowerfulpodcast.com. So thank you again, Diane. It's been a really great conversation.
Oh, thank you. I've enjoyed it immensely.
Absolutely. So guys, check us out on another episode of the Pretty Powerful Podcast next time. And I hope everyone has an amazing week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining our guests on the Pretty Powerful Podcast. And we hope you've gained new insight and learned from exceptional women. Remember to subscribe or check out this and all episodes on prettypowerfulpodcast.com. Visit us next time. And until then, step into your own power.